In this video, we continue from the previous video to write simple SQL statements to extract information from tables. We are working with the AP database. In the previous video, we answered this question: what are the vendor names in ascending alpha order? We saw that we created a query window. We typed in the name of the query and we ran it by clicking the execute button, and we got a result set. Here's a more complex question. What are the first 5 vendor names and cities of those vendors in Ohio in ascending alpha order? We're asking for only 5 records. Even if there are 100, they only want 5. We're asking for 2 columns from the table, vendor names and cities. We're asking for a filter, addresses in Ohio, and we're asking it to be sorted in ascending alpha order. The breakdown is like we saw before, but we're filling in more of the blanks now. We've got a filter, we've got a subset, and we've got multiple columns being extracted from the table. We're still only using one table, and that's intentional. We're just getting started, therefore we will do more complex things with multiple tables later on. But for now, a single table, 2 columns, filter by state, pick the first 5 rows only, and sort ascending by vendor name. Here's a quick and dirty solution. Again, we opened a query window and we typed in select top 5 vendor name, vendor city from vendors, where vendor state equals Ohio, order by vendor name ascending. So let's go do that in SSMS. Here we are in SSMS. We have the AP database open. We're logged in using the AP login credentials. We have the vendors table open just for reference. We can see what the column names are. To create our query, we click on New Query. And let's do the use AP just to make sure that SSMS knows what database we're targeting. And let's write all the clauses to get us focused on what we're doing. If you're not quite sure where to start, if this just isn't making sense to you at this point, and why would it? You've never seen it before. Just write the clauses. We know we need a select. We know we need a from. In this case, we need a where and an order by. Can't go wrong. Select, and according to the question, we need the vendor name, and we need the vendor city. It doesn't matter what order you select these in, because this query will become the basis for a report or a web page or a drop down on a screen or a combo box, and the developer of that control or that output has complete flexibility to move these columns around. You can generally use an order that makes sense to you because it doesn't affect anything that happens down the road. Okay, we've got our select clause, 2 columns from the same table. Now we need to tell it what table. We're selecting from the vendors table. I'm pressing escape here to clear this help. Is there a where clause? Yes, we were asked to filter this result set by state. And we peeked and we looked at the state table, we looked at the data in the vendors table. We know that states are 2-letter abbreviations. If you're not sure, of course, go over to the vendors table, right click, select top 1000 rows, and the vendor state is 2 letters. At least it appears to be. We'll make that assumption at this point. Okay, And then order by what? Vendor name, ascending. Does that work? Nope, it doesn't. It doesn't work because OH is not a column name. And since it is not delimited somehow, it thinks it is a column name. SSMS, SQL Server are confused. Single quotes. Run it again. And there we go. There are 7 vendors in Ohio, in different cities around the state. Now if you go back to the slide again, what they want to know is what are the first 5. Now when they say first 5 and they say ascending alpha order, we assume that they want the first 5 alphabetically. There's an underlying assumption there that's pretty reasonable. So, how do we get the first 5? Well, we need to go back up here and modify our select and put in top 5. Now what do we get? Instead of 7, we get 5. We get the first 5 alphabetically by vendor name. As we talked about earlier in the previous video, we can use an alias for each of these. Run it again. And now the result set has a little more friendly column names. Just as an aside, we will use the alias, we will use the as keyword for other things besides user-friendly names. We will use it to just simply rename something when there are multiple things with the same name, when we are joining multiple tables together. Down the road, then this will become even more important than it is now. So get into the habit of using the as clause when you specify columns in a select. This is what we got on the slide. Looks good. This is what we got in the real world. Looks good. This is what you would turn in. In your assignment this week, you will be doing queries. You will be writing queries, and this is what you will turn in. You will open up your screen snip, and you will grab just enough to make your point. Then you will paste this into a Word document, add a caption, and away you go. I don't want the entire screen. I just want the part that shows me these 3 things. The Object Explorer, so I can see how you're logged in and what tables you're accessing. I want the SQL window, so I can see the query that you wrote. And I want the results set so I can see that the query works and produces the right results. Do not snip the entire screen. Do not capture the entire screen. Just snip the relevant part of the screen. When you get this finished, you cannot save it on my machine. You cannot save it on the SQL Server instance in the closet. If you close this, you will lose your work. I highly suggest that you do a copy of this and then paste it somewhere on your machine, correctly labeled, so you know what it is and you can refer to it later. Because I will not save a copy for you, and you will not have a copy of that except as that screen snip, which is not in text. It's a bitmap, so it won't do you a lot of good. If you need to reproduce it, you'll have to do it by hand. Another trick you can do, if you like, is you can add comments to this. The dash dash is a comment delimiter in a SQL statement. It also turns green. which is a nice visual cue. If you like to do that, great. You don't have to. We will, in further work that we do way down the road, make significant use of these comments, but at this point it's really not necessary because it's fairly obvious what the query does since it's so short. Let's move on to another query. Oh, we skipped this slide. You can see that I added a little comment here. Why is name in blue? And hopefully you're asking yourself the same question, because you'll notice that the select, the top, the from, the where, the order by are all in blue because those are keywords that SQL Server, that SSMS recognizes. But all of a sudden name is in blue, but name is one of our comments. I'm sorry, our column names that we used an alias up here. So what happened there was we chose an alias that was already a keyword in SQL, which is not a good idea. If that happens to you, you're going to want to change that alias. You just can't do it, or put quotes around it, and that will hide it from the processor. I'm not a big fan of using aliases that are reserved words, so let's try to avoid that. Let's do another query. What invoices are over $800? Okay, I haven't given you the answer to this one. You should stop the tape at this point. Go get a cup of coffee or tea or your beverage of choice. Open up SSMS, work on writing this query, and then restart the tape, and we will look and see what solution I have. So when we come back, I will show you the solution for this particular query. We are back. Hopefully you were able to write that query. I will go ahead and talk about it now and create one for you. This is where we left off in SSMS. I closed the previous query effort. I can roll up the vendors table. We don't necessarily need that. If you look at the vendors table before we roll it up, you'll see there are no invoices in there, at least there don't appear to be. One of the challenges in this field is understanding the structure of the data. I mean, it is overwhelming when you've got hundreds of tables with column names contributed by numerous different developers using different styles. Sometimes finding something can be problematic or even challenging. In this particular case, it's not so bad. We look and see there's an invoices table. I'm not trying to frustrate you. I'm not trying to throw you into the deep end at this point, so you would expect to find an invoices table that's fairly straightforward. And if you open the invoices table, there's a total field, there's a credit total, there's a payment total. The question we're answering is what invoices are over $800? Probably invoice total. So we need to have a little bit of intuition here. If you're not quite sure, you can always ask. I don't want you to struggle too much with semantics. I know we're not accountants. I know that you should be able to use some reasonable common sense to figure out which fields are appropriate in these queries, but sometimes you're just not sure. You're tied up in knots. You need a little clarification, and that's perfectly fine. What invoices are over $800? Well, we definitely need a column, and let us assume, reasonable assumption, that invoice total is the amount we're after. I'm sorry, the column we're after. Are there any expressions? No, we have a column that works for us. We don't have to add, subtract, multiply, divide. What tables are necessary to get the information? We've already decided that the invoice table is what we need. Since this is week 3 of Introduction to Databases, we're not doing anything complex like joining tables. We'll get to that in a few weeks. How is it filtered? Wow, here we go. We need invoices over $800. We're definitely filtering by the amount of the invoice. How is it ordered? Uh-oh, ordering was not specified. You can push back and ask for more information. How would you like these invoices ordered? Do we want all the rows or a subset of rows? We haven't been told. We can assume that all the rows are desired, or we can, again, come back with a reasonable question and say, do you only want the top 5? Do you want all of them? Again, that depends on the data. If there's 1 million invoices, it's unlikely your customer wants 500,000 invoices in the results set. If there are only 100 invoices in the entire table, then it's okay probably just to return the entire result set. New query, use AP, select from where, order by. We can fill those in. We can even leave blanks if we like. We are selecting invoice total as invoice total, building that good habit of using the as from the invoices table, where invoice total is greater than 800. Do we want greater than or equal to? Do we want everything that's 800 and above? Well, the original question is invoices over 800, therefore we can probably assume that they don't want invoices that are exactly 800. It's narrow, but it's something that you should think about as you're writing your SQL. Are we ordering by anything? I don't see any ordering here. They're not asking us to sort the invoices in any kind of order. I'm going to take that out. Do I have what I need? What invoices are over $800? Execute. There they are. They're not sorted in any way. The information is basically worthless because it has nothing associated with it. There are no customer names. There are no invoice numbers. There are nothing but totals. That is the literal interpretation of this question. That's the minimum amount required to answer that question. Now, as an IT professional, you know that it is very likely that your customer will come back to you and say, what are the invoice numbers? What are the due dates? Who has these invoices? What vendors? Therefore, you may want to think ahead and put in the invoice number. That is much more useful. Now at least we have something to refer back to, because an invoice total without any relative information doesn't do anyone any good as far as I can tell. Now what I'm going to do, in many cases, I will tell you what I want in my results set. I will be more specific. If I give you an assignment like this, what invoices are over $800, you're welcome to come back and ask. What else do you want? Do you want invoice total only? Do you want invoice numbers? Hopefully you're realizing that these natural language questions that we're answering can be non-specific, can be a little bit unclear. We have to apply our professionalism, we have to apply our intuition, we have to think a little bit. So if you gave me this, I would be more than happy to accept that as a correct answer, because I didn't tell you anything else. I didn't tell you to sort it. I didn't tell you to give me the top 5. I didn't tell you to add specific columns. I would be happy to accept this. Moving on to the next slide. What invoice numbers are 5 characters long? Now I'm not going to go through the entire effort with you again to develop the query from scratch, but I do want to introduce the concept of an expression. In this particular question that we're answering, we need to count the number of characters in an invoice number. For whatever reason, the customer only wants a list of invoice numbers that are exactly 5 characters long. I don't know why they're being audited by the IRS or the FBI's outside with a warrant. I don't know. In this case, then, we don't want a particular column, but we want an expression based on that column and perhaps that column itself as well. We need some way to figure out how long an invoice number is. If we go back to SSMS again, I'm going to close this from the previous exercise, and I'm going to look at the invoice number. It tells me it is a character field, which can be as long as 50, which I only want the ones that are exactly 5. How about new query, use AP, select invoice number as invoice number from invoices where I need to find out, I need to figure out, I need to learn, I need how to research. What do I do to figure out how long the invoice number is? Can I guess? Is there a length function? Did it work? Length is not a recognized built-in function name. My guess did not appear to be correct. It was intuitive, it was based on my previous experience, but it doesn't seem to work. What do I do? Well, hopefully you read in the book what the correct function name is to calculate the length of a string, of a character field. But let's just say that we haven't done that. Let's try to find it through Google. SQL length of string. Even the Google has seen this before. This is nothing new to the Google. It very happily suggests a search phrase. The first hit appears to be what we need just at first glance. The website it's going to refer us to is W3 Schools, which is authoritative as far as I'm concerned. It's a well accepted, well understood site that covers a lot of different programming topics, HTML, CSS, SQL. I would be confident going there to find the answer. And it looks to be LEN, whereas I had guessed LENGH. Let's just trim that back. Does the squiggle go away? Trust me, it will. There you go. Don't panic over the squiggles. Sometimes you will have the correct syntax, the squiggle will persist. At this point, it's just easier to ignore it. And there I go. There are 4 invoices that are exactly 5 characters long. Referring back to the slide, that is the reasonable solution for this natural language question. I wasn't asked for anything else. I wasn't asked for invoice amounts, dates, vendors. I wasn't asked for it to be sorted. I would be more than happy to accept this as a solution. Again, then, to solve this problem, hopefully you read it in the book, hopefully you already knew about the length operator, but if you didn't, then a skill that we develop as IT professionals, and I'm not joking about this, we develop the skill of researching problems using search engines. And in this particular case, because we were skilled at writing that search phrase, we got a good answer on our first result and we were able to solve the problem. Do not sell that short. Focus on that skill, develop that skill, and you will be much more in demand as an employee. The rest of the slides I will leave to you. You can use these as practice. I expect you to be able to write these kinds of queries at the end of this week. If you can solve these problems, then you are progressing at a good rate. Before we adjourn, a brief look at the homework. This is posted on Blackboard. I want to emphasize a couple things. What you're going to do is you're going to write queries based on natural language questions that I provided. You are going to take screen snips of those queries, as I talked about in the video, then you're going to paste those into a Word document. Every screen snip must have a caption. The caption must be the number and the text of the question you are answering. If you do not provide that, it will not be graded. You owe me 8 screen snips, each with a caption. Do not overthink the queries. Do not stress out. All the queries, I will tell you, only require one table. They may require an expression. They may require a sort. They may require a limited number of records. But there are multiple solutions for these queries. So if I ask you for the last name of all the employees, just give me the last name. Don't give me their first name. Don't give me their address. Don't give me their blood type. Just give me the last names. If you also provide the first names, it's extraneous, it's not requested, but I won't complain about it at this point. Keep it simple. Don't overthink the questions. Don't join tables together. We haven't even gotten there yet. Be well aware that these are simple queries that you should be able to answer with a select, a from, a where, and an order by, and nothing else. With that, I will adjourn. Feel free to email me with questions if they're not appropriate. Otherwise, put them in the FAQ so everyone else can enjoy them and benefit from the answers that I provide. Thank you.